Being snowed in somewhere remote doesn't feel like danger at first. It feels like permission. The world gets smaller, the storm does the thinking for you, and everything outside the windows turns into a blank screen. That kind of isolation makes the smallest inconsistency feel like a hand on the back of your neck. This was a few winters ago, February, the kind of February that eats cell service and spits out static. I was doing night audit at this little ski lodge up in the mountains. Not fancy, just cozy in the brochure way. Dark stained wood, those framed photos of people skiing from the 90s, and a lobby fireplace that never really warmed the corners. The lobby smelled like wet wool and carpet shampoo because everyone drags snow in and the whole building spends the season trying to dry out. I still remember the coffee. Not fresh coffee, the kind that sits on a burner too long and turns sharp. We had one of those big bun machines behind the desk, and I kept making new pots like that was going to make the night feel normal. I folded towels, restocked those little soap bars, kept the weather radio low so it didn't bother the guests. Wind warnings, road closure updates, the same robotic voice saying the same thing in different ways. People came in earlier, before the worst of it. Families with skis, a couple from out of state, one guy traveling alone with a brand new parka still stiff from the store. Actually, wait, it wasn't midnight yet. It was around 10:30 when the county posted the closure. Our manager texted something like, "Roads officially closed, ride it out, stay put," like it was cute. After that, the lodge settled into this quiet that wasn't peaceful, just sealed, like the building had been shrink-wrapped in snow. It was me at the front desk, one maintenance guy named Ray, and a handful of guests. Ray was older, thick hands, always smelled like machine oil and peppermint gum. We didn't have great cell service up there even on a clear day, and in the storm it was basically nothing, so the staff used these beat-up Motorola walkie-talkies, the kind with the cracked belt clips, and the speaker that always sounded slightly blown out. I sat behind the desk with my little battered laptop open, the property management system on one screen, the lobby cameras on another. Every so often, I'd click through the angles like it was a ritual. Lobby, front door, back door, hallway, stairwell. The snow outside looked like TV static. The first off thing was so small it barely registered as a thought. A new reservation popped into the system after the road closure. Just appeared. A name, a check-in time stamped after the closure went live, and a room assignment. My brain did the normal human thing and tried to save itself work. Online booking that didn't cancel, delayed sync, internet cutting in and out. The system was old and always acting weird in winter. Everything had an explanation if you wanted one badly enough. I radioed Ray anyway, because being responsible for a whole building at night turns every small thing into your problem. He came up from the basement in that slow, unhurried way of someone who has been through a lot of nights. He leaned over the counter, squinted at the screen like the pixels were lying to him. "It's probably just the system," he said, like he was handing me a blanket. I nodded, because that was the cheap answer, and we both wanted it. The problem with cheap answers is they stop working the second reality refuses to stay in one shape. I refreshed the guestivist, just to see if it would correct itself. And it did, sort of. The new reservation was gone. In its place, a different name showed up, different room that was supposed to be empty. Not just empty, out of order. We had a bathroom leak a week before, and housekeeping had taped a printed sign on the inside of the closet door for room 12, out of order in block letters. No guest, no key issued. The room didn't exist in my head as available. But there it was, on my screen, like it had always been there. Occupied. Checked in. My throat did that dry, papery thing it does when the body decides it's getting ready to run. I swallowed, and it didn't help. I started doing the procedures, because procedures give your hands something to do while your brain tries not to slide into panic. I checked the keycard system. No new keys had been made for room 12. I checked the physical registration binder under the counter. The one with the stiff plastic sleeves and the handwritten notes that always looked like they were done in a hurry. Nothing for that name. No ID copied. No credit card authorization. Nothing. The guest list on the screen stayed confident. Room 12. Occupied. I clicked over to the camera feed for that hallway. That camera was frozen. Not a bad signal, fuzzy, not flickering. Frozen.
The same frame, perfectly still. A strip of carpet, the corner of a painting, the pale rectangle of a door. The timestamp in the corner kept moving forward like everything was fine. The image didn't change at all. My fingers started missing the keys, little clumsy taps, like I'd forgotten how to type, like my hands were wearing gloves. I told myself the camera had just locked up. It happens sometimes. Cheap system, old wiring, storm messing with the lines. I picked up the desk phone to call the outside line and get a dial tone just to prove the world was still connected. The receiver gave me a breath of static and then nothing. Not dead silence, a thin, pressurized nothing, like holding a seashell up to your ear and hearing the ocean, but the ocean is wrong. I set the receiver down carefully, like it could break. Ray was still there, leaning on the counter, watching me do all this with that patient maintenance guy face, like I was getting stressed over a printer jam. I printed the guest list to show him, something physical, something with ink that couldn't flicker. The printer under the counter whined and chattered, and then spit out paper. 2 pages. The first page looked mostly normal, except the names didn't match what I'd just seen. The order was different. A couple of guests were missing. One of them was a guy I clearly remembered checking out earlier. His gloves were soaked and he complained about the vending machine. I remembered that because I had to refund him for a crushed candy bar. On the printed list, he wasn't checked out. He was in-house. The second page was just one line, one room, one name. And I hadn't typed anything extra. I hadn't hit any extended option or printed a report summary. It came out like the printer had been waiting to tell me something. Ray took the pages and looked at them, and I watched his jaw tighten just slightly. The peppermint smell from his gum was suddenly too strong. He tried to laugh, and it came out wrong. "See?" he said, tapping the paper. "System." But his eyes didn't leave that second page. I picked up my walkie and pressed the button. My thumb was slippery, and I realized my palm was sweating. "Ray?" I said, even though he was right in front of me, because saying it into the radio made it feel official. "I'm doing a hall check." He frowned at me, like he wanted to tell me not to, but he didn't. He just nodded and said he'd stay by the desk. The hallway air was colder than the lobby. The heat always lagged back there. The carpet muffled my steps, but my ears were working too hard, grabbing at every tiny sound. The building had its own noises, pipes, vents, the distant thunk of ice sliding off the roof, but my brain kept trying to turn them into footsteps. Room 12 was at the end, past a vending machine with a bright red Coca-Cola logo that buzzed too loud in the quiet. The out-of-order sign was still where it had been. I could see it through the gap of the closet door, like it was trying to reassure me. I knocked anyway. Not a polite knock, a firm employee knock, like I belonged there. No answer. I listened until the silence started to feel heavy, until I could hear my own blood moving in my ears. I tried again, another knock. Still nothing. My mouth tasted like pennies. I slid the keycard from behind my badge lanyard. My fingers didn't feel like mine. Too slow, too big. I swiped. The lock beeped green. That little electronic chirp hit me like a shove. Room 12 wasn't supposed to accept a key. Room 12 wasn't supposed to have an active lock. The door cracked open an inch and stopped on the chain. From inside, a voice spoke, calm and close,
like the person had been standing right there waiting with their face near the gap. "It's okay, I'm on the list." The sentence was polite, casual, wrong in a way that made my stomach drop so fast it felt like falling down stairs. It answered something I hadn't said. It was the exact kind of thing someone says when they know the rules better than you do. I didn't speak back. My tongue wasn't cooperating. Air went shallow in my chest, like my lungs were trying to hide. My hand moved on its own and pushed the door shut. The latch clicked. The lock beeped again, like it was satisfied. I backed up, and my heel bumped the vending machine, and the whole thing rattled, and the sound felt obscene in that hallway. I walked back fast, not running. Running makes you loud and desperate. I walked fast like I had an errand, like I wasn't trying to keep my breathing from turning into something animal. When I got to the desk, Ray looked up like he'd been holding still the whole time. I didn't even sit down. I went straight to the computer and refreshed the guest list again, because the part of my brain that still believed in screens needed to see the lie change. The list updated. Room 12 was still there. The name was different. Not a typo different, a completely different name, like the system had swapped out the person in the room the way someone swaps a coat on a hook. Then another line appeared under the staff notes section, where it should have been blank on Night Audit. Night Audit. Not as an employee tag, as a guest entry, room assignment and all. My skin went hot. My hearing narrowed. The fluorescent lights over the desk started to feel too bright, too close, like they were pressing down. Ray leaned in and saw it, and whatever he'd been holding onto in his face finally slipped. He didn't say "system" anymore. He took his walkie off his belt and turned the volume up like sound could protect us. In the back office, there was a solid door with a deadbolt. It wasn't meant for hiding, it was meant for cash drops and paperwork and keeping guests from wandering behind the desk. That night, it turned into the only thing in the building that felt real. Ray killed the lobby music. He turned all the lobby lights on, every single one, until the place looked sterile and exposed. Then we went into the back office and locked it. We sat in there with the cameras pulled up on the monitor, watching the lobby from a bad angle. The hallway camera stayed frozen, perfectly still, like the building had decided that part of itself was none of our business. The desk phone kept doing that static breath thing every time we picked it up. Ray tried his cell anyway, out of habit. No service. He tried again and again, like repetition could bully a signal into existence. I kept sipping coffee that had gone cold because my hands needed something to do besides shake. Hours passed in chunks. Wind slammed the siding. Snow built up on the windows until the outside disappeared completely. The camera feed showed the lobby empty, front doors locked, no one walking through, no new cars in the lot, just snow swallowing everything. At one point, this part always gets slippery in my memory, I heard footsteps, not on the camera, in the building. A soft, padded sound in the hallway outside the office, like someone walking slow on carpet. Ray heard it too. I know he did because his eyes snapped to the door and he stopped chewing his gum. We held our breath and listened harder than people should have to listen. The sound went away, or it blended back into the building's normal noises. It became impossible to tell what was real and what was my nervous system inventing to justify the adrenaline. When the sky finally started turning that pale morning gray, the storm eased like it was bored with us. A plow came through late, scraping the lot with that grinding sound that usually makes people feel safe. Guests started coming down for breakfast in puffy jackets, acting annoyed about the roads and the Wi-Fi like that was the biggest problem in their world. Nobody mentioned room 12. I checked the guest list again in the daylight and it looked normal. Room 12 was out of order again. No occupancy, no odd names, no night audit entry. The printer log showed my print job from the night, but the actual pages I'd kept, because I kept them, I swear I did, were gone. I had tucked them into the binder pocket under the counter. In the morning, that pocket was empty. Ray and I told the manager when he finally got in.
He listened with that expression managers get when something inconvenient is being described. He blamed software. He blamed the storm. He said IT would look at it. IT came back a day later and said there was no remote login, no manager account access, no record of anyone changing reservations, no record of a check-in to room 12, no payment record, no ID scan. The system, on paper, had behaved. That answer didn't make me feel better. It just narrowed the options down to the two worst ones. Either someone had been inside that building and knew how to move through it without leaving the normal traces, or reality in that place could slide. Names could shift, lists could update themselves, doors could beep green for rooms that didn't exist. I finished out the season because I needed the paycheck. I stopped taking night audit shifts after that. I told them it messed with my sleep. I made it about something ordinary because ordinary explanations keep people from looking at you like you're contagious. I quit a month later anyway. Now, anytime I'm in a hotel and I hear someone walking a hallway at night, my body does the same thing it did outside room 12. Dry mouth, cold hands, listening too hard, waiting for a calm voice on the other side of a door to say the one sentence that makes everything smaller. It's okay. I'm on the list.
Being awake at 3 a.m. during a snowstorm does something ugly to the brain. The whole world is muffled, the streets are blank, and every normal sound gets enough space to turn into a threat. Last winter, late February, one of those weeks where the weather app keeps pushing the same warning and everyone at work starts talking like they're storm experts, I couldn't sleep because the house kept going cold and then warm again. The heat was kicking on in these short bursts like it was giving up. I was on the couch with a throw blanket that smelled like detergent and dog, half watching YouTube on my phone, half listening to the siding flex when the wind hit it. The only light in the living room was that cheap red number glow. Not even a real alarm clock, just the microwave clock across the room, the kind that's too bright at night, like it's proud of itself. It said 3:12, then 3:13, and I remember noticing it because I'd been counting down until the storm peaked, like that meant anything. The street outside was basically erased. Snow had been coming down for hours, and the road in front of my place had that untouched look, like a powdered surface you don't want to be the first to ruin. It was quiet in a way that isn't peaceful, quiet in a way that means nobody is outside to see anything. Then I heard the plow. That sound is its own thing, a diesel engine pushing through heavy air, and that low scraping rumble that carries even through closed windows. It has this rhythm to it, approach, pass, fade, like a slow train. The first time it went by, it didn't register as anything. It was almost comforting. It meant someone was working, someone was out there doing something responsible while everyone else slept. A few minutes later, it came back. Same sound, same speed, close enough that the windows gave that tiny vibration like the glass was acknowledging it. I got up and did that thing where you pull the blind a quarter inch and lean your face into the cold gap, trying to see without being seen. The truck went by slow, and the highlights washed my living room for a second, bright, white, clinical, and then it was past. The blade wasn't down. That's the part my brain tried to smooth over at first. It did that denial thing where it offers you convenient explanations before you can even ask for them. The blade was up because maybe it was repositioning. Maybe it was heading to a different street. Maybe it was county, not city. Maybe I didn't see it right because the snow was coming down so hard. But then it came again. And again. Not fast, not like it was lost. Slow loops. The exact same pace, like it was measuring the street with a ruler. The engine notes stayed steady, no change, no stopping to clear. No spray of snow off to the sides, no fresh scraped line appearing in the road, just a plow truck doing the sound of a plow truck without doing the job. That kind of thing makes your stomach sink in stages, not all at once. First, it's just a mild discomfort, the way you feel when someone stands too close behind you at a gas station. Then your body starts committing to it. Your shoulders creep up, your jaw locks without permission. I checked the microwave clock again because I needed something normal to anchor to. It was 3:16. I told myself calling anyone would be dramatic. A worker making rounds was a boring explanation, and boring explanations are addictive when you're trying to stay calm. The roads were bad. The driveway was already filling in. I had that thought about sliding into a ditch if I tried to leave, and that thought was sticky enough to keep me planted. I didn't want to be the person who calls the cops on a city vehicle. That embarrassment feels real in the moment, like it could actually harm you. It makes you hesitate. So, I stayed inside. I kept the blinds mostly closed. I watched through slits and reflections. The plow passed one more time, and instead of fading away, the sound thickened. It didn't move off down the street like it had been. It slowed. That was when my mouth went dry, like someone had turned the humidity off in my throat. My tongue felt too big. My hands were suddenly clumsy, and my phone felt slick in my grip, like I'd put lotion on without realizing it. The truck stopped directly in front of my house.
Not at the corner, not near the intersection like it was checking signage, directly in front, lined up so the headlights aimed right into my living room window like it was trying to light me up from the inside. The glare turned the glass into a mirror, and I could see my own outline more than I could see outside. That made it worse. That made it feel like I was the thing being observed. The engine kept idling, that low, constant vibration, steady as a heartbeat that isn't yours. I stood there with my shoulder pressed into the wall beside the window, trying to keep my head out of the light. My knees were locked straight, and I remembered noticing that because it started to hurt. My body had picked freeze, and it wouldn't switch modes. The clock flipped to 3:17. That's the time that stayed with me, the way certain numbers stick to certain memories like they belong together. 3:17 a.m. is a red glow in my head now. The headlights clicked off. Not the engine, just the big lights. The living room went dim all at once, like someone had thrown a blanket over my face. For half a second there was relief, because darkness feels like privacy. But it was the wrong kind of dark. It was intentional. It was the kind of dark you use when you don't want to be seen. My heart started punching in my chest, not racing, just heavy, like each beat was trying to climb out. The passenger side door opened. I couldn't see the person clearly, just movement against white snow, and the wind pushed the falling flakes sideways so everything looked smeared. A shape stepped down. Boots made a crunch that I felt more than I heard, because the idling engine filled the air. I backed away from the window so fast my heel hit the coffee table, and the pain shot up my leg, sharp enough to make spots flash in my vision. I didn't even look down. I just moved deeper into the house like distance alone could save me. That moment is where all the normal explanations died. Normal work looks normal, even in a storm, even at night. A real plow doesn't need to sit in front of one house with the lights aimed in like a spotlight and then cut them the moment it thinks someone is watching. I grabbed my keys off the hook by the door and immediately almost dropped them because my fingers wouldn't pinch right, that jittery, useless adrenaline trimmer, the kind that makes you fumble the one thing you need to do.
I turned off the lamp in the kitchen, even though it was already dim, because any light felt like a beacon. I didn't walk in the center of rooms anymore. I stayed against walls, like the house was suddenly a place you could be seen through. My phone screen looked aggressively bright. I dimmed it. My hands were shaking hard enough that I mistyped the emergency number the first time. I remember staring at my own thumbs like they belonged to somebody else. When I finally got through, I didn't speak normally. My voice came out thin and flat, like I was trying to sound calm so the situation would become calm. I gave my address in a whisper, then repeated it because I wasn't sure the dispatcher heard me over the storm. I said, "Plow truck," and then corrected myself. "A plow truck, I think, but it doesn't have markings that I can see. It's just sitting. It's in front of my house." The words piled up too fast. My lungs couldn't keep pace. I moved into the back of the house. The bedroom felt safest because it had one small window and I could put the wall between me and the street. I locked the bedroom door, and that sound, click, felt too loud, like I'd announced myself. The idling stayed out there. Then I heard it, muffled through the front door area. Not loud, not aggressive, just casual, work casual, like the tone someone uses when they're offering to help you carry groceries. "Hey, County Plow, you want me to get the end of your driveway too?" That sentence did something terrible to my stomach. It wasn't a threat. It wasn't even angry. It was designed to sound helpful, like it was ridiculous not to open the door, like I'd be rude to ignore it. My body went cold in a way the thermostat couldn't explain. My forearms prickled. I held my breath without realizing it, and after a few seconds my chest started burning and I had to let air back in through my nose as quietly as possible. I didn't answer. I didn't move. The house settled around me. Pipes, wood, that faint ticking sound heaters make, and every tiny noise felt like it could travel through walls straight to whoever was outside. I put my hand over my mouth because my breathing sounded too big. I hated that my own body was audible. The dispatcher stayed on the line, and I remember her voice sounding far away, like it was coming through water. She told me officers were on their way, but the roads were rough. Rough meant time. Rough meant minutes stretching into something else.
Outside, the Plow's engine revved a little, then dropped back down, like impatience, like a test. Footsteps crunched again, not running. Slow, deliberate crunches. Then they stopped. The silence that followed was the worst part, because the engine was still going, but the movement wasn't. Movement is information. Stillness is imagination. I stayed pressed against the bedroom wall with my phone against my ear and my keys biting into my palm. The metal edges left little half-moon dents that I noticed later. My shoulder cramped. My jaw hurt from clenching. Then the engine sound shifted, like the driver turned the wheel. The idling moved from outside my house to about to leave. Tires made that packed snow squeal, the slow grinding roll of something heavy. It didn't peel away fast like it got spooked. It left like it had all the time in the world. The Plow rolled down the street, and I listened until the diesel sound thinned out into the storm and became nothing again. The quiet came back, but it wasn't the same quiet from before. It was contaminated, like the street had learned a new way to be dark. The police showed up, I don't even know, 20 minutes? 40? Time didn't behave normally in that room. Actually, wait, no, I remember checking the microwave clock when I finally came out of the bedroom, and it was after 4, so it had to be at least half an hour. By the time they got there, the snow had already erased the evidence. The officers looked tired and annoyed in that winter shift way, and I couldn't blame them. They took it seriously, but there was also that practical shrug that comes with weather. No plate number, no clear description. Snow plow truck is like saying a white car. The storm turns everything into the same color. I had a doorbell camera. That felt like a lifesaver in theory. In practice, the footage was mostly glare, then darkness, then the sound of a diesel engine rumbling like an animal in a cage. No face, no readable logo. The angle caught the plow blade like a silhouette, and that was it. The next morning,
Daylight made everything look innocent in the way mornings always do. The street looked normal again, like it had never been watched. But there were tire tracks where the truck had stopped, heavier, deeper impressions right in front of my place. And near the end of the driveway, there was this churned-up patch where someone had stepped and shifted their weight, like they stood there long enough to decide something. I called the city. I asked in the calmest voice I could manage if they had a route on my street around 3 a.m. They passed me around to 2 different people, and the final answer was a careful kind of nothing. They couldn't confirm it, the truck didn't match what they had scheduled. The county and the city both had plausible deniability, and that's a terrifying thing to hear when you're the one who watched it happen. It never resolved into a neat explanation. Nobody got caught, nobody came back to apologize. There was no satisfying end where a supervisor calls and says, "Oh yeah, that was Dave, he was just being weird." What happened instead was smaller and worse. I stopped assuming a work truck meant safety. I started closing the curtains before the sun even fully went down. I bought heavier ones that don't glow when headlights hit them. I installed motion lights and aimed them at the driveway and the front walk like I was preparing for a siege. I keep my phone charged before bed now, not because it's responsible, but because there's a specific kind of helplessness that comes from watching the battery icon drop while something idles outside your house. And every time it snows, I still find myself looking at the driveway in the morning, scanning for tracks that don't belong, because that night taught me something I didn't want to learn. The storm makes it easy for anything to show up, and the storm makes it easy for it to leave. Nothing makes a place feel more alone than a frozen lake in late winter, when the surface turns into this hard, glassy thing and the world goes quiet like it's holding its breath. That kind of quiet doesn't comfort you. It presses on your ears until your own footsteps sound wrong. I looked down at the ice to watch my footing, and I saw footprints trapped under it, like somebody had walked there, and then the lake just sealed over them. This was on February 21st, a couple winters back, outside a small town where people treat frozen lakes like roads. Snowmobiles, ice fishermen, kids cutting across after school, that sort of place. I still can't walk on clear ice without my stomach doing that slow sinking thing, like my body remembers before my brain does. The creepy part isn't just that I saw them, it's where they were going, and what I noticed behind me right after I said, out loud, "That's not possible." People always think fear is some big dramatic thing. It isn't. It's a tiny shift. It's your brain going from weird to not safe, and your body obeying before you even finish the thought. Being alone in the cold with no traction, no people, and your car parked a quarter-mile away turns every small detail into a threat. And the only reason I didn't turn around immediately is because I was already late, my phone was basically dead, and that shortcut across the lake was the difference between getting home and being stuck out there after dark. It was late afternoon, that ugly winter light, where the sun is technically still up, but it already feels like evening. The heater in my car barely worked, just enough to keep the windshield from fogging over if I aimed the vents right at it. My phone was at 3%, and it kept dimming itself like it was already giving up. I had groceries in the back, nothing exciting, just a bag with boxed stuff and coffee, and I was thinking about how I was going to get home and thaw out my fingers enough to open a stupid twist cap. I remember the boots because they were newish then, heavy Sorel boots, the kind that make you feel invincible until you realize they squeak on ice like they're screaming. That sound follows you. Cold floors, frozen steps, that lake.
Every step made this high, rubbery squeal, and it felt too loud for the amount of empty around me.
The main road around the lake was longer, and that day it was partly unplowed. People in that town didn't really fear the lake the way outsiders do. There were tracks cut into the snow where snowmobiles had gone across, a couple sets of boot prints. The lake was just part of the route, like cutting through a parking lot instead of taking the street. So I parked at the edge, tucked into a little snowy turnout, and I started walking across. At first it was normal. Crunch of snow, wind in my hood, that faint, dry, cold smell where the air feels sharp enough to cut your gums. My shoulders were up around my ears, and my hands were buried deep in my pockets, even though I had gloves on, because gloves never feel like enough when it's that kind of cold. Then I hit a section where the snow had been scoured away, and the ice was exposed. It wasn't the nice, opaque, safe-looking white. It was clear in patches. Not perfectly clear like a skating rink, more like cloudy glass with windows cut into it. Clear enough that your eyes could get greedy and try to see down. That's when the lake stopped feeling like a shortcut and started feeling like a dare. I slowed down without meaning to, and my steps changed, shorter, careful. My boots squealed louder on the bare ice, and the sound bounced weird, like there was nothing to soak it up. I saw marks under the ice first, lines and scuffs, like someone had dragged something across it a long time ago. My brain took the easiest explanation and tried to move on. Old scratches, fishing gear, a sled. Then the lines got too organized. Heel, toe, heel, toe. Boot prints, under the ice. They were trapped down there like bugs in amber. The shape was so specific it made my throat tighten. It wasn't just a vague human shape, it was tread, a distinct edge where the sole had pressed and lifted. My mouth went dry so fast my tongue felt stuck to my teeth. I stopped and stared, and I could feel the cold coming up through the soles of my boots like the ice was trying to drink the heat out of me. I actually said it, quiet, like the lake could hear me. That's not possible. I don't know why I said it out loud. Saying it made it worse. It made it real in the air. My brain tried to save me from the feeling by offering explanations like it was flipping through a file cabinet. Early season thaw, a layer of water, a refreeze. Somebody walked when it was slushy and then it locked over. It happens. It can happen.
But my eyes didn't care about explanations. My eyes locked onto the prints the way you lock onto a bruise you didn't remember getting. I followed them without moving my feet, just tracing them forward through the clear patch. They led toward a dark shape ahead. An old fishing shack or something like it, a low, boxy little silhouette with a deeper shadow underneath, sitting out on the lake like it belonged there. The kind of thing locals leave out all winter. It was maybe 60 yards. Actually, wait, it might have been closer than that. Distances do weird things on a flat white surface. It felt like it was waiting in exactly the place the prince wanted me to look. My hands started going numb inside my gloves. That heavy, dead numbness that makes your fingers feel twice as thick and half as useful. My heartbeat got so hard I could feel it in my throat, not metaphorically, like it was physically pushing against my collar. I realized I'd stopped breathing. Not like a dramatic gasp, just I had been holding it. Like if I stayed quiet enough, the situation would stay quiet too. I forced myself to inhale, and the air burned down into my chest. And then I saw the second thing. Fresh footprints on the surface. Not the old ones trapped under, not the ones that could be explained away with freeze and thaw. These were on top, pressed into the dusting of snow, crisp-edged and clean, angled out from the shore in a direction that didn't match the snowmobile tracks. They were recent enough that the wind hadn't softened them. They were heading toward me.
My stomach dropped so hard my knees loosened for a second, and my balance went wobbly on the slick ice. I caught myself and stood there with my arms slightly out, like a toddler, because falling out there felt like the beginning of something that wouldn't stop. I turned my head slow, pretending I was just looking around like a normal person taking a normal shortcut. A figure stood near the shack. Not moving, not waving, just there, upright and dark against the pale. Too far to see a face, close enough to see the posture though, the way they were planted, weight even, like they didn't need to shift around to stay warm. My skin prickled under my layers. I started walking again, because stopping felt worse. Stopping felt like admitting I was in a situation. My boots squealed. Every step was loud. Every step felt like an announcement.
I kept my eyes forward because that's what people do when they don't want to invite attention. My shoulders tightened so hard they ached, and my jaw was clenched without me deciding to do it. Halfway through a step, the ice made that sound. Not a crack like in movies, not a dramatic splitting, just a sharp little pop, like a knuckle snapping, somewhere under the surface. The lake settling, pressure shifting, normal. My body didn't treat it as normal. My breath hitched, and a hot flush ran up the back of my neck, like my blood was trying to sprint while the rest of me was stuck on glass. The wind died for a second too, and the quiet that followed felt wrong. It felt staged, like the world was leaning in. Then there was another sound, duller, a knock-like sound, not loud, not clear, just enough to make my brain search for a source and come out empty. Ice does things, water moves, air pockets shift. My legs didn't care. My legs wanted land. The figure near the shack moved just a little, not toward me, just enough to prove it wasn't a mailbox or a pile of gear, a real person. And then they called out, casual, almost friendly. "You don't want to go back that way. Ice is better over here." The words landed on me like a hand on the back of my neck, too normal, too helpful, too timed. The sentence had the rhythm of someone who had said it before, like this was a line that worked. My mouth tried to make a polite response. My body refused. My lips felt stiff. My tongue felt thick. My throat was a narrow tube. I nodded once, I think, a tiny movement that didn't commit to anything. I kept walking, but my steps got messy because my focus split in half. Half of me watching the ice for slick patches, half of me tracking that voice in the open air. The trapped footprints under the ice kept sliding by beneath me, and it felt like walking over a story that ended badly. I made it maybe another few steps before something in my head snapped into place. The polite version of me shut off. The version of me that assumes the best shut off. There is a point where your brain stops negotiating with reality and just sends the message down to your muscles. Leave. I turned back toward the car. Not smoothly, not casually. I pivoted too fast and my boots skated a little and my arms windmilled, and for a second I thought I was going down. My heart slammed so hard it made my vision pulse at the edges.
I caught myself and started speed walking, then slipping into a half run that wasn't really a run, more like an aggressive shuffle, because full running on ice is how you end up on your back staring at the sky. I didn't look back. I couldn't. Looking back felt like giving away time. My lungs started burning, not from exertion, but from breathing too fast in cold air. Each inhale was sharp. Each exhale fogged my hood and made my eyelashes feel damp. The squeak of my sorels got faster and higher, like the boots were panicking with me. Another pop came from the ice, closer this time, or maybe it only felt closer because I was listening for it. My hands were so numb they didn't feel like mine anymore, just heavy shapes at the end of my sleeves.
Land showed up as a messy white edge, snow piled up, weeds sticking out, the kind of ugly shoreline that had never looked so good. The moment my boots hit snow instead of bare ice, my knees almost gave out. The snow grabbed my soles like a hand. I kept going, straight to my car, and my keys were in my pocket, but my fingers couldn't do the simple job of grabbing them. I fumbled, dropped them once, heard the tiny metal clink into the snow, and that sound made my stomach flip because it was small and helpless. I found them again and jammed them into the lock. My hands shook so hard the key scraped the paint. I got the door open, fell into the seat, and slammed it shut like I was sealing a hatch. Lock, lock, lock. I hit the locks even though I knew the doors were already locked. The sound of the locks clicking was the first thing that made me feel even slightly contained. I looked out across the lake. The light had faded more than I realized. The surface was a big, flat sheet of blue-gray, and the far side was starting to blur. Snow drifted low across it in thin ribbons. The shack was still there, but it was less defined, like it was being erased. I couldn't clearly see the person anymore. That was almost worse, because it meant they could move without me knowing. It meant they could be anywhere on that open space and my eyes wouldn't catch it. I started the car on the first try, which felt like a miracle. The engine noise filled the silence, and my whole body kept shaking, even sitting still, even with the heat wheezing out of the vents. I backed out and drove away without doing the careful, slow thing people do on snowy roads. I drove like leaving was the only task my body understood.
Later that night, once my hands stopped shaking enough to hold my phone steady, I told someone. Not a big dramatic report, just I said what I saw. Under ice prints, fresh tracks on top, a person out by the shack, the way they spoke like they were directing me. Someone went out there later, or they said they did. In daylight, it was just a lake, just ice, just wind. The prints under the ice had the kind of explanation that fits on a page. The early season melt and refreeze thing, the physics of it. But the fresh surface tracks didn't sit right. The timing didn't sit right. The way that voice carried across all that open space, like it knew I would hear it. The way the wind died for that 1 second, and the lake made that knock sound right when my brain started screaming. I stopped taking that shortcut. Every winter, when February comes back around and the days start shrinking again, I think about those footprints trapped under the ice, like a record of someone walking out and getting sealed into the lake's memory, and I remember how easy it felt to become part of that pattern, just because I was late and my phone was dying and I wanted to save a few minutes.
Out of everything we heard tonight, which story actually unsettled you the most? The first one really got under my skin, but I want to know which one did it for you. Vote for the scariest story in the comments below.